Welcome to the show, Nathan Marzion. I appreciate you coming on. If you're a Wisconsin sports fan, you've probably come across his content. He's everywhere on Twitter. He's at the Marquette games, Bucks games, wherever. I guarantee you've probably come across this stuff. So, Nathan, thank you much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So, yeah, to start, your Marquette team is coming off a huge win against Baylor last night. What are your initial reactions to that?
That was honestly, I think, the best game I've ever seen a Marquette team play. And they've had big wins before. I've seen them have some success, but to beat the number 6 team in the nation by 30 points and just completely beat them down from the get-go, essentially. I mean, it was 23-9, pretty quickly, and it was never close. I've never seen something like that where it was kind of, I mean, even just all the Marquette fans I talked to were like just shocked by it, because it was like we thought maybe we'd have a chance to keep it close, potentially still at the end, but it was like to look that good and just dominate them like that, nobody saw it coming. So definitely, I think, changed our I mean, we nobody, I think, thought we were bad. Nobody was super out on us this season, but I think it took people from like, yeah, this team's all right, we're gonna be just mediocre again, probably a borderline tournament team, to like, hey, this team might be good. So I think it got some people excited, and they got a big game on Saturday that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, 100%. And going off of that, what were your thoughts on Marquette kind of heading into the season, like before that game? And what are your thoughts going forward? What do you think this team can accomplish?
So before the game and kind of just coming into this season, I was thinking it's going to be pretty similar to last year. There's going to be still growing pains. It's still going to be a young team with a relatively new coach. And, there's going to be highs and lows. I think I kind of expected we're going to maybe, go on a little bit of some bad stretches at times, lose maybe a couple in a row, 2 or 3 in a row. And we're going to probably have some big wins like we usually do. And we're going to look really good in some games. And, coming into, they had Purdue on the road early in the season. And that was a game where we were like, okay, just, again, try to keep it close, give us some optimism, and not just, look like we can't even hang with these guys. And they were in that game late. They had I want to say a 9-point lead in the second half with like 10 minutes left. Unfortunately lost the lead, but it was like, okay, again, we can hang with teams. Like, we can, on the road, one of the toughest places to play at Purdue. It's like, it's a good sign that they can do that and hang in a game like that. So that was a good sign. And then, they just beat Georgia Tech, which was a game they needed to get. Georgia Tech's not very good, but in the tournament, that was a game that they definitely needed to get some momentum going and coming into this big week, which we have Baylor and Wisconsin. And then, that Baylor game obviously was great. So I think I was kind of expecting, okay, pretty similar to last year, probably a bubble-ish team. If they can get a couple big wins, they'll get off that bubble and be really a solidified tournament team. And I mean, again, so far, so good. They got that big win, and I mean, their KenPom jumped up a ton after that game. I think they went from like 59 to 33, which is huge, which basically means now it's like, okay, just beat the teams you're supposed to beat. You're going to get a couple good wins. And at that point, you should be a tournament team and a team that can potentially make some noise with, the style of play, and they force turnovers and everything like that.
Sure. And my reaction to that is taking those 3 games, kind of dissecting them a little bit more. Purdue has looked fantastic ever since that Marquette game. And yeah, Marquette probably should have won that. They probably should have won. But Purdue has looked like really, really good. And then, yeah, Georgia Tech, they're not good, but they're still a high major team. And Marquette handled them the way they should. And that's a positive sign that they're not letting that game be a close game. And then Baylor, that was I did not see that coming at all. I think that at the end of the year is going to be a really good win, where Baylor, I know it's early and preseason rankings don't matter much, but talent-wise, the number 6 ranking is warranted. Their heart and their effort in that game was a little questionable. Like, I read an article by CBS. They do a little preview before every game, and Scott Drew said, we didn't have any energy against the mid-major they played against before. And I saw that come out where they get punched in the face, and they really did not have any fight in them. They'd never really made Marquette sweat at all after getting down. So I'd imagine with their coaching and the talent they have on the team that they'll be able to figure things out and, just tune up that energy level a little bit, where at the end of the year, that's going to be a heck of a win. What do you think about the whole the culture change Shaka's done? What do you think of the job he's done so far?
I love it so far. And again, people are going to look at the tournament results and say, oh, same old Marquette. Maybe the people from the outside are going to say same old Marquette, getting blown out in the first round and it's the same team. And it's like, no, that's not true. With Wojo, I think we got to a point and Wojo was a good guy. Nobody here has anything against Wojo as like a person, but as a coach, it was just kind of time to move on. We just weren't seeing results with him. And I think it was time for a change, and Shaka's come in and really given us that, energy and that passion I think a lot of people had for Marquette basketball back again, because it did seem like it was kind of starting to get lost a little bit. The people that, even my friends, it was like we used to be so into it and we started to lose it just a little bit because it just was the same thing over and over and over again. And I think we kind of had it reinvigorated after Shaka took over. And, again, last year, the ending wasn't good and we had, those growing pains and we didn't close out the season again like we wanted to. And that's something that's been a pattern the past few years. But I have to believe that, as this team gets a little bit older, as, Shaka gets integrated into this whole thing, we're going to see results. And I think this, again, the style of play they play and just the way that they can hang with anyone, I believe that sooner rather than later, we're going to start seeing some postseason success in March.
One thing I will say about Wojo is he had success in the Wisconsin-Marquette rivalry. Had a 4-4 record. Do you think Shaka can replicate that success that Wojo had in this matchup?
Yeah, and you mentioned so Wojo. I mean, those guys. The Wisconsin was the better team for quite a few of those matchups, I feel like, and at the end of the year, it was looked back on and you'd say, wow, yeah, Wisconsin ended up being better, but we were still able to beat them, half the time. And it's like, I think, Wojo did a good job in those games. And I definitely think this is a huge game for, every Marquette fan. I think they take it a little bit personally because everyone around us is Badger fans. And, a lot of us growing up were Marquette fans or our parents went to Marquette. And it's kind of a personal thing where, you want to beat those guys and you want to have those state bragging rights. So I think, again, with the energy Shaka's brought back to this, I'm excited to have this at home again. Last year we were on the road, didn't go our way, but to have it back home, and with people pumped up after a big win, I definitely think that they can get this win and potentially take it to the Badgers and beat them by even double digits. I think. I mean, I'll take the win either way, but if they can really get going and get the crowd behind them, I think they can. And yeah, I think going forward, it's like we're going to be battling. We always kind of battle Wisconsin for recruits, but we're probably going to get the better athletes. And I keep coming back to the style of play Shaka plays. It's like I do like how we can speed teams up and how it's rare that a team is going to, especially coming into the Fiserv Forum, it's going to be rare that a team like Wisconsin who plays a slower style is going to kind of be able to play that against us and control the tempo, control the game. And so I do trust that Shaka is going to be able to put pressure on these Wisconsin teams going forward that traditionally play that style and really kind of force them to play our brand of basketball and get wins doing that.
100%. And yeah, that's kind of thing. They're polar opposites stylistically, but Wisconsin has been moving. Well, I shouldn't say moving. Last year, they went from like 350th in pace to like 220th. So they made a little jump last season. But yeah, they definitely want to slow it down. And that's something that Wisconsin's been struggling with a little bit this year. Is typically they never beat themselves. And you look at it last night and the Kansas game, and Wisconsin was uncharacteristically making mistakes such as goofy fouls, bad shot selection, turning the ball over, and just missing layups. Simple things that they never do, they did. And that's one of the biggest things I think for Marquette heading into this game is, okay, Wisconsin might, more than in past years, give you the opportunities to really take advantage of them making mistakes when they never really ever beat themselves. So I think Marquette has to capitalize when Wisconsin, picks up a dumb foul or when Wisconsin forces a bad shot. Marquette has to push the ball and control that tempo, what we're talking about earlier. So yeah, you're a diehard Marquette fan, and I want to just ask you overall, what's your favorite memory of the Wisconsin-Marquette rivalry?
Man, okay, so I gotta say it's got to be something where we beat them in Madison because those are always the most fun. Is going into enemy territory. I've been going to this game since I think I've been there every year since like 2014. The only one I missed was the COVID one, But
Oh, wait.
my favorite one was probably 2017. We went in there and won by like 20. We had Rousey, Marcus Howard,
Sure.
Sam Hauser, the whole squad that just we went in there and we were raining down threes on them. So going into enemy territory and beating them is always the most fun. And I mean, that 2020 game, of course, was awesome with Justin Lewis and the tip in on the buzzer beater. But
Yeah.
I think not having fans there, and that season ended up kind of just being blah. And so I think that took it down a little bit. But so my favorite personally would be going into Madison and beating them by 20.
Yeah, I remember Wisconsin had two walk-ons in the rotation for that game. After King and Trice got injured, they had Mesh Potato. That I don't want Aaron Mesh,
Yeah.
and TJ Schlunt. And
Yep.
I remember one thing I do remember. I remember Marquette raining threes. I remember the sign Marcus Howard
Mhm.
did to the bench. I remember that walk on Aaron Mesh baiting Andrew Rousey into a technical. Uh, when Marquette was already had the game won by like 20, but that cracked me up. That was probably the most lopsided game in my memory that I can think of. That was a hell of a game by Marquette, and that team by Marquette had three of the best shooters you'll ever find in college basketball all in one squad.
Yeah, it was electric watching those guys. They would, because you just never, they could put up 90 on you at any point, and they didn't play much defense, but it's like they were fun to watch at least.
Yeah, I mean, they took one of the best teams down of this millennium, or no, they took Villanova down to the wire, who was one of the best teams of this, since really we've been born. Which just shows that they could beat anybody, but yeah, sometimes with the defense that they can let teams they should beat stay in the game a little bit longer than they should. So yeah, I've been following you for a while on Twitter. I've seen that you've befriended some notable Badgers, like Sam Dekker, Brevin Pritzel. How did that happen? And yeah, it's just how did that happen?
I'm honestly not entirely sure. I remember, like, it was probably a couple years ago when I think Sam Dekker either replied to someone else's tweet or replied to mine and kind of like inferred that he was familiar with me and stuff, and I was just like, oh, like Sam Dekker knows who I am. That's kind of cool. And then from there, I think he DM'd me, followed me, and we talk every now and then. And so yeah, that's been awesome to kind of get to know him just a little bit off the court. He's a really good guy, and it does keep me in check a little bit because it makes me realize, hey, I hated these guys as players. I always just look at the Badgers as like the enemy, and they can do no right. And it's like, these guys aren't, they're not bad guys. They're good guys off the court. They're fun to talk to about sports and stuff. And they're mostly Packer fans and Bucks fans. So we can bond over that. And yeah, Brevin Pritzel as well. I mean, I met him a couple times in person in Madison, and he had a double against us in the 2019 game, which I was at. I was in the student section for that game, and he played a big part in kicking our butts in the second half. So I got to give him a hard time for that, and he gave me a hard time for being at that game and stuff. And we can laugh about it now, but yeah, those guys, they're good guys. And again, it puts into perspective of like, hey, we don't have to completely hate these guys, and we can hate them on the court, we can dislike them and stuff, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's all in good fun.
You literally answered my next question. My next question was, does the hate still run as deep now that you're friends with them? So no, that's interesting. So yeah, and Dekker also addressed this issue with you. What do you say to Badger fans that say this isn't a rivalry for us? What are your thoughts on that?
I usually don't even like entertain it, because it is, whether, and I'm not saying it has to be, like, to me, it's my biggest thing. It's it's a huge rivalry to me because it's been a personal thing for me since I was younger. When, again, everyone I grew up with was Badger fans. I got a lot of crap for being a Marquette fan. I talked crap to them. We went back and forth, since middle school. This has been going on. And so
yeah,
it's always been a huge thing, is like, personally, I want to beat them. I want, my dad went to Marquette, and I just want Marquette to be the better team. And so the people that say it's not a rivalry, it's like, I'm not saying you have to completely hate us or like root against us all the time like I do for them. I'm just saying it's definitely a rivalry. Like you can't, when they play each other, like, you got to pick a side. It's got to be a little bit of like, you want those state bragging rights. So I mean, it's same thing to me as like an Iowa State thing where, they're not in the same conference, but they're competing for recruits. They're, they're in-state rivalry, and it's just like, I don't know how you can say it's not. So the players have told me that it is. Like, again, Sam Dekker has told me, he's like, yeah, it's a rivalry. He was basically told by Marquette that, that Marquette didn't really want him because they didn't think he could compete athletically in the Big East, and he used that as a chip on his shoulder and
Yeah.
stuff like that, where it's just like, they're competing for recruits, and they're all that kind of stuff. And I'm glad to see. I know Cameron Jones in the offseason was talking on Twitter about, like, Marquette students shouldn't be wearing Badger gear on campus, and like they had a video of kind of him going around, and like any person with a Badgers hoodie on or like another team's hoodie on, he would kind of like, hey, here's a Marquette hoodie, here's a Marquette shirt, put this on, stuff like that. I think it's good to kind of just, again, I'm not saying that you have to completely hate the other side. I do completely hate the other side, but you don't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be that extreme. It can just be, it is a rivalry, and we do, dislike each other a little bit.
Well, I totally agree with you, because if Wisconsin fans want to say it's not a rivalry, stop losing to the game so much. Because Marquette is basically, I mean, probably since 2010, it's probably been about 500, where Wisconsin, they've had the tournament successes. There's been some years where they've been the better team, but they've been losing a lot of those games early in the season. And I will say this, like, Wisconsin games, and there's not a lot of juice in the stadium, or not nearly as much juice at the Kohl Center for the Wisconsin-Marquette game as there is the Fiserv for the Marquette-Wisconsin game. But part of that just has to do with the fact that there's really not much juice in the Kohl Center anymore. I've seen one game in recent years, and that was the Wisconsin-Purdue game, where the crowd was electric. Yeah. They really, Wisconsin's got to do something. They probably got to reseat. They got to re-bowl it where, more students, less 90-year-old people in the front rows. But it just, it 100% is a rivalry. And I think that's just kind of the way to cope with all the losses they've taken in recent memory.
And they do the same thing in football with like Minnesota, where they're like, we don't care about Minnesota. And then, the last couple of years they've lost to them, and it's like, come on. Like, again, I'm not saying that you have to take it as personally and make it as big of a thing as like we do. I do think Marquette fans make it a bigger deal than Badger fans do, but because again, we're the ones that have everyone around us being Badger fans. It's a little bit more personal for us. So I think it definitely is a bigger thing. And the fact that basketball also, having that as our only sport, it's like, we want to beat these guys in basketball. If we had a football team too, then maybe it would transfer over to both, and it might be a little bit more even. But basketball's our thing, and it's like we want to show that, hey, we're the best in the state at this. And so, yeah. And as you said, I mean, nobody can sit there and tell you that, like, oh, Wisconsin's dominated this rivalry and Marquette never. It's pretty much 50-50, and it has been for a while. Even those teams that, even though when they had that stretch where they've been much better than us in the postseason, and looking back, who's had the most success overall, it's definitely been Wisconsin recently. But in this game, it's been very close, and Marquette's always been pretty competitive, and we're still right there. So yeah, it's just something that no matter how you slice it, it's definitely a rivalry. And if a player, that's the one thing, is if the players are telling me it's a rivalry, I 100% know it is. So those are the guys that know it more than anyone else.
And I will say this, especially the Wisconsin kids, especially the Badgers who grew up in Wisconsin. And I think that I'll dive into this a little bit later, but I do think Wisconsin kids understand this rivalry. But sometimes I feel like the outsiders, the kids from Ohio, the kids from Minnesota, might not understand the magnitude of this rivalry when they're on Wisconsin. But let's preview this game a little bit. Starting lineups, or the probable starting lineups, we got Chucky Hepburn and Stevie Mitchell, Klesmit, Cam Jones, Jordan Davis, Tyler Wahl versus Olmax and Stephen Crowl and Oso Ighodaro. And then off the bench, Wisconsin's got Essegian, who's going to play starters minutes. They're going to have Carter Gilmore playing a lot of minutes. And then Joplin, Ross, and Jones will be coming off the bench first for Marquette. As I named the starting lineups to you, any thoughts pop to your head?
For sure. I think the matchup I'm looking at the most is probably Chucky Hepburn and Stevie Mitchell. I think, as I mentioned, the big key for Marquette is going to be forcing turnovers, speeding them up a little bit, getting them uncomfortable. Because when Wisconsin's comfortable and they can just play their style of play, it's hard to beat them. It's hard to really just get out a big lead, and because it's hard to just make stuff happen. And a team that thrives in transition and wants to use their athleticism like Marquette, it's double important. So I think that point of attack defense and kind of making Chucky uncomfortable can kind of make the whole offense uncomfortable, and again speed them up. I think we did a really good job against Baylor's guards. I mean, they forced 16 turnovers in the first half of that game, and that obviously not expecting that to happen. But if they can do that a little bit, and again make those guys uncomfortable, the guards especially, that's what really can kind of change the game and change the tempo.
Oh, 100%. And I'm interested in that matchup, and the matchup that I'm really intrigued in that not too many fans probably are is I'm going to say Cam Jones and Max Klesmit. And Marquette fans are not going to like to hear this, but Max Klesmit reminds me of a lot of, I don't know if you can guess it, but Brad Davison. He's a chippy dude. He can move his feet well laterally. And he can D up. He surprisingly can D up. But I think that they might start off with Jordan Davis guarding Cam Jones, but I think for Wisconsin, the best matchup for Cam Jones is Klesmit. So I think that'll be interesting just to see because Cam Jones is a streaky player. Can Klesmit make him uncomfortable, get him frustrated, get him off his game? Because I would say, yeah, Jones is kind of, when he's on, he's definitely the head of the snake for Marquette. So that'll be interesting. And then another matchup I got for you is Oso versus Wisconsin's backup big men, because Wisconsin truly doesn't have a backup big man. Their backup center, and nothing against them, it's not his fault, but Carter Gilmore, who is more of a small forward, he was a former walk-on. He's more of a small forward. He's playing backup center for Wisconsin. I think that might be a tough matchup for him against Oso.
Yeah, and that'll be big. I mean, looking to get those guys, get Crowl in foul trouble early, and just try to do anything you can to, then get a huge size advantage and just a huge advantage in the paint. Because I mean, we shot the ball really well against Baylor, but I'm not. It's something that I don't think we're a fantastic shooting team. I don't think it's always going to look like that. So I think being able to dominate down low against a team that, as you said, doesn't have a lot of depth there, and get them in foul trouble, use Omax and Oso to put some pressure on them. I think that could be absolutely huge. And Wisconsin's been pretty good at preventing offensive rebounds and stuff like that. But again, if you can get them in foul trouble and have a nice size advantage and really take advantage, then I think that's something that could change, and you could see Marquette do what most teams haven't been able to yet against Wisconsin, which is get a lot of second chance points. And with how they play, you want to maximize your possessions, because again, if they are able to slow the game up, you don't know how many you're going to get. So
yep.
I think that's a big thing to look out for.
Yeah, and I have three keys for this game that for Wisconsin, the first thing is they can't get off to a slow start. And something that's interesting to me is not a single Wisconsin player has played at Marquette with fans. Not a single one on the roster. Mm-hmm. That's where I think there's going to be a culture shock for a lot of them. Like, a lot of them are not in-state kids. I don't think a lot of them understand the magnitude of this rivalry and what it means to Marquette fans. The Fiserv Forum is going to be nuts. Marquette's going to be geared up, ready to go. And if Wisconsin gets off to a lethargic start, they might find themselves down big and be playing from behind at the hostile Fiserv Forum. So the biggest thing for Wisconsin is you can't get down big early, because that's just not a good recipe in that environment. And then on the flip side for Marquette, punch them first. Punch them like you did against Baylor. You get off, try to be ready to roll right away. Be locked in, knock down the open shot. So that's a huge thing for me. Is one, Wisconsin cannot get off to a slow start. Otherwise, I think, like you said earlier, that Marquette could win by double figures if they get off to that hot start. Number two is, this goes for every single Wisconsin game this season, but especially this one. Crowl and Wahl cannot get in foul trouble. We mentioned that earlier. They are key, especially Tyler Wahl. When Wahl's on the court, Wisconsin's look pretty good. When Wahl's off the court, they've struggled immensely. Against Kansas, he got his fourth foul, I believe, with like 9 minutes left, or maybe 8 minutes left. they went on like a 10-0 run, and the guy he was guarding scored. He was just scoring all over the place. Wahl comes back in the game. That guy doesn't score barely at all the rest of the game, and Wisconsin goes on a quick 8-0 run. So Wahl is both those guys, Crowl and Wahl, but especially Wahl, have to stay out of foul trouble. And then, yeah, obviously, like you said, for Marquette, attack those guys. Even though Wahl can really D up, go after him. Try to bait him into a foul. Take a charge when he's driving on offense. If they get in foul trouble, that's a recipe for success for Marquette because the depth just isn't there for them this season. And then the third one is Wisconsin has to clean up their sloppy play against Marquette's pressure. One thing that will help Wisconsin to this game is the fact that they win against Dayton and they win against Kansas, two teams who really like the pressure. So they've seen some pressure so far, but it was in a neutral site environment. It wasn't on the road. So, but the biggest thing is Wisconsin just has to kind of go back to their traditional values and actually live them out rather than what they've been doing these last few games. Like Tyler Wahl, again, in their game against Wake Forest, he had back-to-back turnovers in the first half, and then he picked up a second foul, reaching behind someone, trying to get a steal, and it wasn't a smart play. So, they just have to clean up their play. So those are three of the biggest keys I have for them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'd say, my number one key was going to be, take advantage, as you kind of mentioned earlier. Wisconsin hasn't been as perfect at kind of, minimizing their mistakes as they have been in the past. And I think that's something that right away I was like, that's how we can beat this team is, again, we are a team that likes to force teams into mistakes and play that style and get out and transition that way. And again, use our athleticism and play how we want to play. That's something we're going to have to do. And I love that you mentioned, that none of the Badger players have played a game at Fiserv against Marquette. And this is that team's first true road game of the season. I do think that Marquette will get out to a good start in this game. And it's not, I usually I feel like I don't trust that Marquette's going to get out to a good start. I think even like that Baylor game, I just felt like, yeah, we're going to probably be playing from behind most of this. And luckily I was wrong. They jumped out to that big lead, but that game also kind of showed what can happen when, we're forcing turnovers and the crowd's getting into it, and it'll be even 5-10 times as loud as it was last night on Saturday. That showed what can happen when it's just a snowball effect when Marquette's forcing turnovers and playing like they want to play, and it compounds and goes from it can go from a 5-point lead to a 20-point lead just like that, and that's what we saw on Tuesday. So I completely agree. I think those Wisconsin kids might not be quite prepared for, not playing a road game yet this season and not seeing, firsthand how Marquette fans take this rivalry. I don't think they'll be quite prepared to play in this environment. I think Marquette can get out to a lead, and I think that's how they're gonna win this game is if you can get out to a lead, then that right away forces Wisconsin to not be able to play their style because they want to keep it close, they want to keep it sloppy, and they don't want to have to rush and speed things up at all. And it's like if you can jump out to, let's say, a 12-2 lead or something, well, all of a sudden they do have to rush a little bit. And I think it all can just completely, as I said, compound and adding all that stuff together, I just think could be a recipe for Marquette potentially winning this thing, even by more than people expect. And, if Wisconsin is able to, get out to a pretty good start and weather the storm, then that's how it could stay close, could stay sloppy, and Wisconsin could pull it out. But I'm trusting that Marquette can get it done after what I saw yesterday.
Yeah, and I like that you say the word sloppy because Wisconsin has kind of fit every negative stereotype of the program this season, where, they had that game against Dayton where I think the final score is along the lines of like 43-41. It hasn't been pretty. There's been a lid at times. And another point I want to bring up is a lot of bunnies have been missed by Wisconsin so far this year. They've missed a lot of layups. Honestly, they should have never lost that game against Kansas. They missed a million layups in the first half, and they still found a way to crawl back and push that game to overtime despite one of the worst halves of basketball I've really ever seen from Wisconsin. Second half, Wahl got a silly fourth foul. They shot themselves in the foot, kind of the point I'm hammering there. And yeah, if Marquette wants to win this, I think of how Wake Forest handled Wisconsin last night, and that Wake Forest down in crunch time they had some plays where they kind of pushed the ball down the court. They got a quick three. When Wisconsin makes that mistake, you just gotta take advantage. So
And really quick too, yeah, you mentioned all the bunnies they're missing everything. They're 352nd right now in 2-point
wow.
percentage. They're shooting
Yeah.
39% on twos, which is pretty dreadful for 2-point shots. So yeah, that's a huge thing. Is like I don't think they're not like a sharp shooting team. I think they're not going to get up a ton of shots. They might make a decent percentage, but again, that's just the other thing is I'm like I think if Marquette can hit some shots and get them behind, it's just I don't think they have the offensive firepower because they're not used to having to shoot a ton of threes and make a ton of threes, and they haven't been particularly good from two. I just don't think they can keep up if Marquette can get out to a big lead. And I think that's a good point of view to make that, they've been missing a lot of easy shots. They've been missing shots from two. They just have not been, very good offensively. I think they're outside the top 100 right now. So it's just something to take advantage of.
No, I agree. And Chucky Hepburn in particular, he is shooting, I believe, like 41 or 42% from three and 28% from
Yeah.
two so far, which
Yeah.
I would have not expected from him. And then, yeah, I do think I look at Wisconsin, seeing what they bring back from last year, the trio of Crowl, Wahl, and Hepburn, and some of the pieces around them. I don't think they'll be this bad the rest of the year offensively. I do think they will improve, and Wisconsin has had a history of kind of turning things on, in February and March. But I do think they will improve because I've seen a lot of Tyler Wahl missing easy bunnies where he has $1 million move, $0 finish. And last season, years before, Wahl has been a fantastic finisher with all kinds of spin around the hoop, finishing through contact. So I don't expect Wisconsin. I do expect them to raise the level up, and I think they are capable of being a decent offensive team. Not good, but decent. Right now, they've been bad. So I would expect them to tune it up. And one kid to watch out for is Essegian off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
He is very talented. I think he has the potential to play in the NBA one day because he just has a feel that no one else does on the Wisconsin team, where the game comes smoothly to him and naturally, and he can shoot the lights out. So that's a guy to watch out for off the bench. Is if there's a lid on the rim for the starters, if they can throw him in for Jordan Davis and get some quick buckets, that could be a remedy for them.
Yeah, I can already tell Essegian's going to be a guy that, Marquette fans and just anyone who, Big Ten fans probably are just going to they're going to hate for, probably 3-4 years here. Is just, he's got the face that you hate. And he's a pesky player, and he's a good player. So yeah, he's definitely gonna be someone that kind of, you want to beat and gets under your skin a little bit.
And Klesman, I think, is another guy like that. He's not as
Yep.
skilled as Essegian, but Klesman has that Brad Davison chippiness.
Mhm.
I haven't seen any nut shots so far, but the dude is chippy. And then Essegian, I'll say this: he has rosier cheeks than Aaron Kraft, and that's saying something. So
yeah.
I mean that will be fun if he turns out to be a good player. He'll be a villain. There's no doubt. So. Yeah, we kind of broke it down so far. I got two more questions regarding this game. Is who do you think the X factor is for Marquette in this matchup?
I'm gonna say, if I had to pick an X factor, I'm gonna go with Omax. I think when Omax plays well, this team, it reaches a different level, and we saw that against Baylor. He had 24, I think, and was just looking fantastic. And we already mentioned, how we're gonna have to be aggressive against those bigs. We're gonna have to potentially get them in foul trouble and dominate down low. And I think if we can, if Omax can play well and play aggressive like he did, last night, that could definitely be something that completely changes the game. And I mean, the thing about Marquette is, yeah, they don't have like, it's not like the Marcus Howard days where they have just kind of one star player and everyone else around them is just, just kind of, you do your little role, but it's more about Marcus Howard. It's like they have a ton of guys that kind of can step up at any point. It's hard to pick one X factor, honestly, because it's like you don't really know who's going to step up. I mean, Cam Jones could have a monster day, and that could be what lifts us just completely to the victory. Stevie Mitchell's defense could be a huge X factor, and again, those bigs are going to be huge. It's like, and then you don't even mention Tyler Kolek, who basically runs the offense. It's like, there's so many guys, but if I had to pick one, I'd say probably Omax.
All right. And now give me your final prediction. Who wins and give me a final score.
I'm gonna say Marquette wins this game. I think. I mean, if this game is in the high 50s, low 60s, I think that's where Marquette could be in trouble. Because again, that probably means that Wisconsin was able to control the tempo a little bit. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think hopefully the recipe that we just kind of talked about, Marquette is able to execute and from the get go get a lead, get guys in foul trouble, speed them up, do all those things that can potentially snowball. And I think this will be a bigger blowout than people think.
Okay.
Yes, I am. I'm biased. I'm uber confident because I love Marquette, hate the Badgers, but I'm gonna pick Marquette. I'm gonna go 79-62.
Okay. Okay. I don't know. That's a solid victory. I'm gonna be picking Marquette as well. I think it'll be a closer game. But the way my prediction is gonna be is kind of what we're talking about is I think Marquette's gonna get off to a fast start. I think back to when Nigel Hayes kind of sarcastically in the press conference afterwards, where he's like, "Yeah, I'm from Ohio. I didn't really know this was a rivalry.
Yeah.
This was just last year's bump in the road. Big brother, whatever he said." Um, but I think there is a little truth in that, where all these out of state kids in the starting lineup might not understand this magnitude. So I think Marquette's going to get off to a quick start. Wisconsin is going to have to claw from behind. They're going to get it close, but it just won't be enough to get the victory. So I'll roll with Marquette 64, Wisconsin 59. That's my final score.
And just to put it out there, I mean, I have us winning pretty big. But that doesn't mean I'm saying that there's no way we lose this game. I think it'll either be close and Wisconsin can pull out a victory. I think Marquette, if they again, it all depends on that start. If Marquette can get out to a big start, I think it could become a blowout. But this isn't me saying like, oh, there's no chance Wisconsin wins or anything. I think there's definitely a chance they're able to keep it close and pull it out. But I do like us to potentially get a blowout win.
Awesome, man. No, I had a good time chopping it up with you here. I have one more round for you. It's a rapid fire round. So I'll just ask you a plethora of questions, just answer in a timely fashion. That sound good?
All right.
All right. First question. Greatest quarterback of all time outside of Aaron Rodgers?
Tom Brady. I don't want to say it, but it's Tom Brady. I mean, I think when we're talking about talent wise, at the end of his career, we'll say Patrick Mahomes, but Tom Brady is the GOAT, I have to say.
Yeah. All right. Dogs or cats?
Dogs, 100%.
MJ or LeBron?
MJ, 100%.
Best player in the NBA outside of Giannis?
Oof. Steph Curry.
If you could pick any of your teams to win the title this year, who would it be?
It would still be the Bucks. I can never pass up a Bucks championship.
Okay, over Marquette.
I love a Marquette championship. It would be amazing, but like I said, if there's a chance the Bucks can win a title, I have to take that.
Okay. So for me, like I'm always a guy who I put like a college basketball title on a pedestal over anything
It's
else.
so hard.
Because,
yeah,
there's one out of like 360 teams to be the last one standing. That's unreal.
Yeah.
So favorite movie?
I'm not even a huge movie guy. I might say I love Wedding Crashers. I'm a big Vince
Okay.
Vaughn guy, so Wedding Crashers.
Oh, me too. Me too. Favorite Marquette player of all time?
Dominic James.
Okay. Favorite athlete of all time?
Giannis.
Okay. Basically, that was Giannis or Aaron Rodgers. That was basically
No,
the
it's
question there.
Giannis. It's Giannis.
And then who will have more wins next year, the Cubs or the Brewers?
I don't think. Oh man, I'm gonna say Cubs. I do think that this isn't me saying the Cubs are going to be amazing or the Brewers are going to suck, but I think the Cubs are going to take a little bit of a step forward and be competitive again, be a pretty good team again. So we had 75 wins this year. I think we'll get to close to 90 next year. Honestly, I think we'll be pretty good.
All right. Well, that's all I got for you, Nathan. Thank you very much for coming on the show and looking forward to staying connected along the way.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it, and go Marquette on Saturday.